The European Union played a decisive role in securing the adoption of the Paris Agreement, and it will do so in Katowice as well to make it operational. And it is essential that COP24 delivers the rulebook for the Paris Agreement, and also that it takes stock of our collective efforts to meet the threat of climate change. It is in this context that the Commission has today adopted its long-term strategy, which is supported by an in-depth analysis that you already can have access in the web. Mainly taking into account that in October, the IPCC special report on 1.5 made it clear that emissions need to be reduced with much more urgency than previously anticipated, and that limiting climate change to 1.5 is necessary to reduce the likelihood of extreme weather events. This has been a real wake-up call.
The B team have come together to try to get governments to agree that by 2050 that the world will be carbon zero. And if we can reach carbon zero by 2050, then the temperature will rise by about 1.5 degrees. And that should just about save the reefs in the world, which if it went to 2 degrees, we believe that every single reef in the world would be destroyed. So what we're hoping is that the governments will actually say we need to be net zero by 2050.
Could this be right? Could they be calling for zero emissions, zero carbon, and zero fossil fuels? This almost sounds unreal, because fossil fuels are found in 96% of items we use each day. And one major use of these products is fuel. Gasoline for cars, jet fuel, heating oil, and natural gas are used to generate electricity. Not only does the oil and natural gas industry supply a massive number of jobs, the taxes and royalties generated from revenue from these industries directly fund schools, roads, emergency services, and more. The products produced by fossil fuels are essential to our daily lives, creating materials like plastic, medicines, computers, and life-saving devices like MRI scanners. And right now, you should be feeling an emotional reaction and asking the question, how will we live without emissions, carbon, and fossil fuels? We won't have cars. I can't mow my lawn. No more cosmetics. No more paint for painting pictures. No more computers and ATVs. And yes, an emotional reaction of fear should be kicking in. And that's what they want, because it leads to the goal. They come up with a goal and make you think that you made the decision. And this is called Hegelian Dialectic. So what is Hegelian Dialectic? Now let's say that you want the masses to choose a color. Now you already know which color you want, but you need to persuade the masses to think that they chose that color. And that's where you need two extremes, a thesis and antithesis, which you also control. Now let's say the one controlling the board wants green, but there is no way that the masses would choose that color. And now at this point, you would create an extreme group that promotes blue, which is the thesis. And then you would need an extreme opposite side, which is antithesis. And this group chooses yellow. Now both sides are so extreme that the average normal person will say, okay, I'm not going too far to the blue side, or I'm not going too far to the yellow side. And that's when they choose the middle ground. And this is the color that they wanted in the first place, which is green. Now let's look at the Hegelian dialectic of thesis and antithesis in our real world in 2020. Here we have the blue side that believes that the world will end because of fossil fuels, and the only way to save it is to get rid of carbon. That means no cars, bikes, buses, chainsaws, mowers, and anything that uses fossil fuels. That's extreme. And they will fight for this cause.
This is not a drill. That's the message of thousands of activists who took to the streets of major cities across the globe Monday to raise the alarm about the climate crisis, gluing themselves to buildings, blocking roads, occupying public landmarks, and being arrested by the hundreds in the first day of a 2-week protest led by Extinction Rebellion. The group reports more than 700 activists from Brisbane to New York City have been arrested in just the first day and a half of protests. Nearly 300 were arrested in London after shutting down major streets and taking over 11 sites in Westminster. One group superglued themselves to a parked hearse in Trafalgar Square as hundreds occupied the area. Other demonstrators shut down Westminster Bridge long enough for a couple to get married before the crowd. This is protester Jake Lynch speaking from the streets of London.
Well, it's now 5 months since Parliament declared a climate emergency, and yet we've seen no emergency legislation brought forward to take effective action to stem the climate crisis. So we're still subsidising fossil fuels more than any other country in Europe. Globally, carbon emissions are still increasing. We're heading in precisely the wrong direction. We here at Extinction Rebellion are taking action to interrupt the flow of normality, because it is that flow that is carrying us towards disaster.
Exchange. Dozens were also arrested in Amsterdam, Vienna, and Madrid. In Brisbane, Australia, an activist hung from Story Bridge in a hammock for 6 hours. Activists also took to the streets in Chile, Colombia, and Mexico. Brazilian protesters held a die-in on Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro. Protesters shut down the street in central Paris near the Notre Dame, and hundreds flooded the streets of Berlin to demand action to combat global warming. This is German climate activist and migrant rescue ship captain Carola Rackit speaking from Berlin.
Als Extinction Rebellion fordern wir, dass die Nettoemissionen.
As Extinction Rebellion, we demand that net emissions be reduced to zero by 2025 as part of an emergency program, as well as an immediate halt to the loss of biodiversity.
And now the yellow side.
My solemn duty to protect America and its citizens. The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Thank you.
President Trump believes climate change is a hoax. We know this because he has said it over and over again.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay? It's a hoax.
The president has tweeted climate change skepticism at least 115 times, including a claim that the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese.
And now the yellow side doesn't care about climate change. It doesn't even believe in it. And now, the average normal person will say, that's too extreme to get rid of fossil fuels, and to superglue my face to a boat in the middle of Manhattan. And it's too extreme to say that climate change doesn't exist, because there's a visual sign of environmental chaos. And what is the choice that the elite want, and the choice that you thought you chose? Well, instead of getting rid of all the cars, we will just not drive for one day out of the week.